adopted pup, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Lloyd Wright, Sinatra, Zappa, Seltzer, and his friend and favorite Franklin dog adopter, Michael Seltzer. I'm Don Was, Oak Park's 116th most regarded music producer, and now, here's Franklin.
Hey, thank you very much to my great band and you out there in TV land and this audience. Spectacular. Once again, welcome to the Franklin Show, a very special edition of the Franklin Show. This is about a subject that is near and dear to me, and it's about a love and a passion for an artist, and we all have those. There are deadheads, there are many fan clubs. But there's a group called the Vanatics, Vanatics, and it was coined by Ralph McLean, a BBC broadcaster. And it's about the people who follow Van Morrison all over the world. I'm one of them. I've met so many great people. We are truly passionate about the artistry of our favorite artist, Van Morrison, who is turning 80 years old this year and is performing all over the world and releasing more music now than he ever has. 5 new albums in the past 2 years. In any event, I've got a great show with some great guests and some great stories about Vanatics and the passion for Van Morrison, and we'll get it started right after
this. I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back. You probably don't remember what you told me.
That was perfect.
But I heard every word.
Okay, welcome back everybody to this very special edition of the Franklin Show as we look at the unique and passionate group of individuals that we have belovedly called Vanatics. Those of us who have been following and cherish the artistry of Van Morrison, who is going to be turning 80 this year. And there will be a big celebration on his 80th birthday, which coincides with my 70th birthday. Wow. Yeah. I'd like to introduce to you one of my friends in the group. He is a labor attorney in San Francisco and a tremendous photographer and one of the original members of the band, if you will, the Vanatics band. Art Siegel, welcome to the Franklin Show.
Hi, Michael. Nice
How are you, sir?
See you.
Good to see you.
You're got the cool notary shirt and the...
Yes, I am. I'm proud of that. I'm the international notary.
Right. I've got
I will say,
my official Van Morrison coffee cup for the occasion.
Very good, very good. So let's talk about this crazy and unique passion we share. I will say this: you are one of the first people that I actually met in the group. And I took a phone call from you as I was boarding a flight. I don't know where I was going to. It was to one of the band gigs where you were giving me some specific information about a meetup. And that is something that is very cherished by those of us in this crazy fan club, if you will, because before and after every Van Morrison gig, no matter where it is in the world, there are a group of us who gather together to celebrate what we're about to witness, and then do our critical review of what we witnessed. And so, Art, I appreciate that. And tell me, how did you get where did you get the bug, and how far back does it go?
Well, when I was in college, house I lived in, my roommates had Tupelo Honey and some other early Van Morrison albums, and I liked them, but I hadn't really caught the bug. In 1978, my girlfriend at the time lived in Los Angeles, and I was in San Francisco. And she said Van Morrison is going to play the Roxy, which is, as you know, fairly small nightclub. And she was going to get tickets by standing in line, at midnight, day before to get them. And she scored these tickets. And in November of '78, this was during his Wavelength tour, which was kind of his rock and roll comeback after his retirement and after the kind of mixed success of A Period of Transition, which was his first album after he came out of retirement. He was, he had a more rock and roll oriented, radio friendly kind of sound for this tour, and he had a really a dynamite band. Anyway, it was a big surprise to me. We she got the tickets. We went to the show, and I just remember watching this and thinking, this guy can do anything. He could do. He has so many roots, and it was the first time I'd really seen that: the gospel, the blues, the rock. All of the threads that make up his artistry. And then later, as I came to know more about where he came from, understood, how he had, even in Northern Ireland, which you don't think of as a real hotbed for these kinds of music. I discovered that this stuff, these genres, this music had really gotten into him at a very, very young age. And he just connected with it so strongly and was able then to really blend it all so that he could be like a preacher, or he could be, like James Brown. And he really had a great mix of things. At that point, I was living up in San Francisco. Van was kind of centered up in Marin still at that point. And so you could see him locally. So that kind of cemented my fandom for him because, we were able to see him at some small venues. And, when he was living up there, he would book these little nightclubs for, if his band was going on tour, they would play some gigs to, rehearse or kind of get ready for the tour. So I had the benefit of all of that. And, that was the point at which I just said, if he's playing somewhere, I'm going to see him play.
Yeah, you were so fortunate, and you still are, because Van Morrison has a base in Marin, as you know. His beautiful daughter Shauna lives there in Mill Valley. I know that you and Shauna have forged a relationship, just as many of us have. She's a delight, and she actually sang at your wedding, which is so memorable to me, except for the fact that I wasn't invited. But no offense, I don't know. It's okay. How do you?
I didn't know you, but okay. I could.
So that's your excuse. Fine.
Right.
But so you've had the good fortune of Van being back and forth to the San Francisco area for all of these years, at least once a year, right? And I, on the other hand, being in Detroit, I started following him back in the mid '70s with Lori, my wife, when we were in high school. And then he vanished for 20 years. I mean, we had no idea until the internet came along that he was performing all over the country, all over the world. And then in the mid '90s, suddenly the internet comes along and shows him in New York, and we go off to the Roseland Ballroom and see him open with Taj Mahal. And that was the start of a rebirth, if you will. But I had run to the record store every time there was a new release from the '70s into the '90s, and cherished every one of those albums because he's just such a unique and prolific character. And here he is at the age of 79. We just saw him in Belfast a couple weekends ago, announcing his latest album, his fifth in the past 2 years, called Remembering Now, which is going to break June 15th. And he released the first single, Down to Joy, which is a phenomenal piece of music that was part of the Belfast movie and won an award. So, we've all had these great experiences, but I think, so what is in your mind the most memorable van experience you've had?
That's pretty hard
Yeah.
because of course, the first one where I really kind of got struck by lightning was, I won't forget that. But I've also been, privileged really to see him at uh, some of the highlights of his career. Um, one great moment was his 70th birthday celebration in Belfast.
Yeah.
I know you were there too.
We were all there.
Yeah, that was a great convocation of his lifetime fans, as well as a big celebration for the city, which really kind of went crazy that weekend. Yeah, as you know, they closed off Cypress Avenue and built a stage and had the BBC come in with swooping cranes and cameras and film the whole thing. And so that was great. I think in the I think it was 1996. He played this little ballroom. It was called the Supper Club,
Yes.
the Times Square area. Um, he did, I think, 3 or 4, maybe 4 shows in a week, and I was there. That was phenomenal.
What about Astro Weeks live at the Hollywood Bowl?
Oh, and that's right. Let's not forget.
Come on, man.
Let's not forget that, which was, as I remember, advertised as a one-off, once a
Right.
lifetime thing, and then I guess Van liked it so much that he decided to basically tour it for the next year.
I heard a story that somebody of note, and maybe among the two of us, sent a note backstage, which I am told Van and his manager at the time read, about how you can't just let this go after one gig, man. You've got to take this on the road. And then about 2 months later, I'm proud to say, it was announced that he was going to perform Astro Weeks live, 26 places all over the world. And my wife and I went to 21 of those 26 gigs.
Yeah.
They were exceptional. And that also was captured. And there's a DVD and a CD, Astro Weeks live at the Hollywood Bowl.
Yeah. There was also a documentary which has not yet come out. That was it's in the can somewhere, and eventually, possibly posthumously, some of these things that we know are in the can. We'll see them. But one of the great things about Van is that he records constantly. And he's got a great archive. Only a small percentage of it has been released, but he has created a label for archival releases, and he's I don't know, has he released 2 or 3 at this point? Maybe 2.
Yeah, he just released the Beyond Notes, which was all instrumentals. He's been talking about wanting to do that for years, and probably the record companies didn't think that would be such a great idea, so he just released it on Orangefield Records, and then he released live at Orangefield, which was his high school that was closing. He went and performed 3 gigs there, and they just released a double set of live at Orangefield, which is great stuff, man. And so, like you say, he's got a tremendous archival collection that he's now finally beginning to see as valuable to we in the fan world, and we're swooping up that stuff as quickly as you can release it.
Yeah, we're definitely buying that, and he's and I think for Record Day this year, he's going to be releasing a few cuts that he left off of that Orangefield release. Although I believe, I'm not sure, but I was told that maybe that's only for the European Record Day, and it's not going to happen here. So
I'll have to check my record contacts and find out.
You and I will.
I'm sure you and I will be able to procure copies. And that's the thing I love about this the most, honest to God, Art, is the friendships that we have all developed. This is not just a bunch of groupies like, we love an artist, so okay, we go see a concert. We not only go see the guy all over the world, and fortunate for us that can, but we have made friendships that are lifelong friendships that are cherished by me and many. And there isn't a city you can go to where you don't have friends and fans that can get together and celebrate. And we're in each other's lives thanks to social media, because John Gilligan created a blog called Mystic Avenue. And we have an ability to communicate with each other on Mystic Avenue every day. And God bless John Gilligan, who's too shy to be on TV. And then before that, there was something called Wavelength, which was a publication that was created by Simon G in the UK. And there have always been communication between all of us. And the friendships that we've developed, to me, are absolutely, I cherish those. I sincerely do.
Yeah, it's been a great group, and there's, a sort of a core, but we're all getting older. Some of us are dying, and some of us are dropping out and dropping in. But yeah, you can go anywhere in Europe or the United States and see old friends. Different mix of them every time, but that's one of the charms of it.
Yep. Well, there will be another U.S. tour announced, and I am very confident that there will be an 80th birthday celebration in the homeland in Belfast. And I'm sure you and I will be there, along with hundreds of others from all over the world for the last time, probably. I'm not saying last time to Belfast, but the last big birthday celebration, my guess is.
Well, I've booked the 90th already.
You know what? God bless, because the guy is unbelievably energetic. He looks better than he's looked in 20 years. He's taken great care of himself physically and mentally. He's producing more and more work. His concerts are beyond, they're just unbelievable. Like I said, I had the good fortune of being in Belfast 2 weekends ago. He did 3 gigs. And honest to God, we all sat and chatted afterwards. And we determined that if we were to rate them on a scale of 1 to 10, I was giving them a 20 each night. They were just beyond belief. He had the brass section. He had Richie Buckley back. He had Neil Wilkerson back. These are former members of the band that haven't been around since 2009. And I got to show them pictures of us together in 2009. Neil and Paul Moran and Sarah Jory and myself and Lori went to the Motown Museum. I took them for a private tour of our great Detroit Motown Museum. And they've always been grateful. And I showed Neil that picture. He goes, "Oh my God, I'll never forget it. It was the greatest." And Richie, same thing. We were hanging with him and having so much fun. And he looks great, sounds great. When I saw him on that stage, I knew we were in for something really special that weekend. So those were great ones. I'm sorry you missed those.
Yeah. Saving up my money for August in the hopes that they'll be.
Yeah, as if you need
it. Then.
All right. I want to thank you, sir. You are a dear friend, and we have had many, many great times together over the many, many years, our wives and our friends and our family. And I greatly appreciate you, and I appreciate your contributions to the group. You're an unbelievable photographer, I have to say. You've captured some imagery of the band on stage that's like second to none, and it's been published, right?
Yeah, from time to time. I do enjoy that. It's getting a little harder as, there's metal detection. It's hard to bring a real camera into most of the big gigs. But, the phone cameras are better and better. So,
they are.
Yeah.
Well, just tell them that you've got new hips like I do. I walk in with all kinds of stuff because I say, "Hey, I got hips." So I stand there and I beep like crazy. In the meantime, I've got cameras and I've got all kinds of my notary stamp, all that stuff.
Well, and thank you for your, I know you, when you can, you post clips or go live at some of these things. And that's always really fun. So
I do enjoy doing that. And people are very complimentary about the fact that we're all able to share to a certain extent, but I go and do as much live recording as I can and watch the people pop up on my screen from all over the world, and they're like, wow, this is great. It's like being there, and it's so wonderful. So
Yeah.
all right, anyway, I've got more about Van and the Vanatics guests coming up. Thank you to my guest, Art Siegel. Art, I appreciate you. Thanks for joining us today on The Franklin Show, and we'll be right back. I'm actually in the home of a major Van Morrison fan and a friend of mine. And he has created what we call the Van Cave in this room right here. And we're just going to go in here, and I'm going to introduce you to Al Botkin and this unbelievable room that he's created. Oh, goodness. Al?
Hi, guys.
Hi. Well, it's just such a pleasure. Now, tell me a little bit about, I was here a year ago when this was basically a garage.
It was a garage. I remember the day well. It was your good self and our good friend Morrison Kid was here.
Yeah.
And basically this was just a building site. This was our old garage. So they actually started work roughly about a year ago, by the 29th of January. Took the guys, building wise and AV specialists, etc. Roughly about 6 weeks to complete. So I'll give you a quick tour.
Yeah.
So I think the best idea is to start on the ceiling. All right. So this is what is known as a starscape. So this is all fiber optics, and you can change the frequency, you can change the color of the lights, and then around the outside is a bulkhead which contains spotlights, but also contains the loudspeakers. So there's a total of I think 10 loudspeakers, and it gives a fantastic sound. So I was talking about sound first of all. So the actual front wall here, I said that used to be the opening for the garage itself. So that was all concreted in or grease blocked in, plasterboard on top, and then the guys cut inserts to put the actual loudspeakers in. So these are large rectangular speakers. So there's one in the center, and you've got left and right. The other speakers you have is the subwoofer, which is gigantic down there. The bass which comes out of that is totally unreal.
It is amazing.
The actual speakers in the bulkhead, you just might see there's white circulars.
Yeah.
So the first two speakers are the Atmos speakers. So they give you the noise that goes right over your head. If you're watching like a war film, you get the bullets going over your head, you can swear a helicopter was just about to land on you. And then the rear two are the rear speakers. So next wall to talk about is this wall here, which I call my military wall. And you also see my biggest fan type of memorabilia is a Caledonia record sign. If you want to find more about the story of how I got it, there's something on Facebook about that. And then at the back, you can just about see the actual laser type of projector which is up there. But you've also got this little bar area. So as you may have seen, I've beamed it to an Art Deco style. So the cornicing and the skirting boards and the style, as you see around the cabinets, are all Art Deco. Because I wanted to give that feel of a 1920s cinema type thing. Yeah. And that links to the color as well. So pink and red curtain.
Right.
So moving around to this wall here, which is known as the van wall. So lots of good stuff there of gigs that I've been to, and of course one which reflects was one of our best bands ever, Celtic Soul.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, on the right hand side, Kurt Wilson sadly died a few weeks ago. But all the rest of the things, we've got the Art Deco radiator here, and then
Wait, I love your shoes. You know, I have a couple pair of these myself.
Yeah.
Not the same because they're custom, right?
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And then further down here, I've got all my vinyl collection and my separate system. So you notice these loudspeakers at the front here. So these belong to my separate system, nothing to do with the cinema setup whatsoever. And then you've got all the AV equipment, a big AV receiver. Because of the amount of loud speakers we have, I've had to get a power amplifier there as well. And then I've got a DVD player. That's that little small box that links the TV system into here as well. And
I love the memorabilia too.
yeah,
I have one of those jackets. I think our friend Brian Heffler.
they are indeed.
Yeah.
They are indeed. As our good friend Lynn Corden would say, it came from the House of Heffler. House of Heffler.
I don't want to give him too much
No,
credit.
God, no.
But
And then,
good
and then finally, in the evening, myself and my wife Lynn, are normally in here, and we sit on these fantastic cinema seat recliners. Of course, Italian leather. You can change the setup, the lumbar, the headrest, footrest, the entire thing. So Lynn normally sits in the one on the right-hand side. I sit on the left-hand side.
yeah.
As you can tell, because I've got my wine glass holder here. All right. And we've got a little table. That's where we have our little peanuts and etc. etc.
I don't think I've ever seen a garage more magnificent than this one, and this is a true testament to our mutual love and admiration of our hero, Van Morrison, who we just saw last night performing here in Belfast at the Whitla Hall, and it was one of the most spectacular gigs we've seen recently.
Recently, exactly, yeah.
But he's 79 years old and still kills it.
Yeah.
So Al, thank you so much for sharing this spectacular award-winning room and studio. Once a garage, now a van cave. On the Franklin Show.
Be right there. Wait. Use the shovel and bucket of water, remember? Drown, stir, drown, feel. Then make sure it's cool.
Where'd you learn that?
SmokeyBear.com. Brushed up on some tips before we left. Don't want to start a wildfire, right?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Well, welcome back to the Franklin Show. This very special edition, all about the crazies we call Vanatics. And I am so pleased and proud to introduce my next guest, who Jeff Beck, the late, great Jeff Beck, said, Leo Green has to be one of the best and craziest saxophonists ever. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome, all the way from London, England, in his car, the great Leo Green. Hi, buddy.
Oh, what a great introduction that is. Michael, how are you? Let's get
I
the
am
questions
never
out of the way.
better. I'm just so
That's
happy
good.
to see you. And again, this is not the first time I've interviewed important guests in their cars.
Really?
I tell the story often that, Jerry Seinfeld and I were sitting around one day talking, and I said, I got this idea about, interviewing people in cars. And I would call it, entertainers in cars. Well, he took it one step further and created something called comedians in cars getting coffee. And
You know what? It's where I spend most of my life. I got to tell you.
Yeah, no. Every time
you
I
know.
talk to you, you're in your car. So
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time, and we'll have great background of buses and
Yeah, I'll paint the picture for you. I'm just parked up north of Soho, middle of London's West End, right next door to the BBC. So,
and I love that spot. I love that spot, and I love
So,
Soho. I mean,
yeah, it's a good vibey spot. So it's good to be here.
Good to have you. All right, so let's talk about you. First of all, you had an unbelievable career as a saxophonist, and I don't know. I'm going to say I consider you to be the male version of Candy Dulfer. Does that ring clear to you? Is that a compliment or an insult?
That's like saying we're gonna compare steak with chocolate ice cream.
Oh.
I tell you what, both food but very different. Candy's a phenomenal player.
Yeah.
She plays the alto, but what we do have in common is we both, I guess, draw from that pool of amazing soul players. She loves you know, people like Hank Crawford and Maceo Parker, who I love as well, and also the older guys like King Curtis and Junior Walker. And I guess also just thinking about it, talking to you now, we do have something else in common in that her dad is a phenomenal jazz saxophone player, and my dad was also a jazz sax player over here in London. Played with the great Ronnie Scott, but also with some of the American bands that came over, like Stan Kenton. So I guess we do have a few things in common. She's a great player who also, of course, worked with Van, but she's what I would describe as she's a proper player. You know, I've been very, very lucky in my career, but she's a proper player, man.
Well,
When she put,
what I'm getting at is she, like you, is a mesmerizing performer to watch. Watching you play the saxophone is joyous. You know, there are certain artists when they're up on that stage and they're wailing away, it just feels good and it makes everyone feel good. And you're one of those performers, and so is Candy.
bless you.
So that was the only thing.
Good
Now,
of you to say. Yeah, hit me.
So you've had an illustrious career. You've played with so many great legends, going back to your Van Morrison days. I know you've been on two of the most notable Van albums, Back on Top and Days Like This, and the jazz albums that he did as well. And you know that looks good on any resume, obviously. But beyond that, you know, you've also had a prolific career as a broadcaster. You've hosted numbers of BBC shows. I'm being offered a BBC show. We'll talk about that later, because I don't want to compete with you. God bless you. But you created this Van alumni band that you've been taking out on the road all over Europe. And man, we'd love to have you here, but that's another story. Let's talk about that, because obviously that's sanctioned by Sir Van, and you put on some unbelievable performances with some legends from the Van Morrison Band.
The Van Morrison Alumni Band. The incredible songs of Van Morrison performed live in concert by musicians who have recorded and toured all over the world with him.
Yeah, it kind of came out really. My first album with Van was Days Like This, and you're kind enough to mention some of the other ones. The one really, which I guess this whole thing has been built around to a certain extent, well, there's two albums. One is the Healing Game album, which we were all on and very much involved with. And the other is the Live in San Francisco double album, which was done, sadly for me, just before I joined. And I still see all the guys that were in that touring band with Van. You know, I still see the guys on other gigs that we get booked on or socially. But we never got together to play Van songs. And one of the things that is amazing about working with Van is this unparalleled, phenomenal catalogue of songs. And it's such a joy to be on stage, you know, working with him, because in one concert, as you know, you've seen many shows, you'll get every genre of music to play. And as a musician, it's really rare to work for someone where you get that. I've been lucky enough to work with all kinds of people. Like you mentioned, Jeff Beck. You kind of know what you're going to get. But Jeff was a phenomenal musician and was one of the guys who gave me my first break when I was 18. I spent time with Jerry Lee Lewis. You know what you're going to get with Jerry Lee Lewis. With Van, though, you've got to be able to cover jazz, blues, soul, Celtic music, every kind of music in between. And I was doing a gig with some of the guys from that band, Matt Holland, Ralph Salmins and Robin Aspland, who all played on the Healing Game, obviously. Matt's very much still part of Van's band now. And we were just reminiscing, and it wasn't the kind of reminiscing that musicians normally do, which centers around, nights out and crazy things. We were just talking about what a joy it was to play Van's music. And we were kind of, oh, I don't know what that is going past, but there's a real bit of London there. We were just talking and we were just talking and saying we missed playing these songs. And it came out of that conversation. I did try doing this maybe 15 years ago. I wanted to get together and just play Van songs. I'm passionate about music and artist repertoire. And it kind of came out of that conversation with the guys. I wanted to put something together. So I saw Van and I said to him, look, I'd like to do this. Are you okay with it? I said, if you're not okay with it, then we won't do it. And he sort of said to me, well, what songs are you talking about? So I showed him the set list and he said, who's done the arrangements? I said, I've done them. He wanted to have a look at them. So we went through the music and he said, yeah, he said, this is, if you want to do that, he said, if you want to do this, you go ahead. And we just got talking about songs. And I think the things you have to remember with Van is that the songs that we all love, whether it be something like Moondance or maybe something more obscure, he's been singing and performing these songs in some cases for more than half a decade. So quite understandably, he probably doesn't want to perhaps do them every night. So he was like
half a century.
Literally, something like, Moondance or Glory. These songs are written, it's called the 60s. This is a long time ago. And Van is what I would call a contemporary artist. He's a relevant artist in 2025. He is constantly creating and composing and writing lyrics and performing and singing. He's not an artist that does the greatest hits from 30-40 years ago, which some do. Nothing wrong with that. So his attitude was, yeah, you've got my blessing. If you want to do this, he said, you're not going to have someone impersonate me, are you? And I said, no, absolutely not. And then we started talking about singers. And I said, what I want to do is feature great female voices. And it was quite interesting because we discussed this. And, Van said there's not, so many people have covered Van songs, but not a lot of great female artists have. There's been some. I know Martina McBride did Wild Night, and Dina Carroll did Someone Like You over here for the Bridget Jones movies that came out. But there's not an awful lot. You think about Rod Stewart, they did Have I Told You Lately. I mean, even Hendrix covered Van. But I think that gave it an interesting slant. We're not a tribute band, and the shows we do we're not, I mean, obviously we're celebrating Van Morrison, but we're not celebrating Van Morrison in the respect we're celebrating the songs, the work of Van. So no one's on stage impersonating Van. That would be ridiculous.
Right.
So what we do is I talk about, if we're doing a song from Days Like This or The Healing Game, I talk about how when in the studio, how it happened, when we play these songs live with Van, or if we do something like St. Dominic's Preview, we discuss the background of the songs and we play it. And the musicians that are playing these songs are, of course, the guys that Van has selected over the years. And between us, I think we worked out we'd performed more than 3,000 concerts with him. And between us, we've got more than 800 recording credits of all the albums that we're on. So what you get is this really genuine sound of guys who play what they played when they accompanied Van. And it's really interesting. We do everything from the early period up until today. And when you have a female voice sing something like Days Like This, for example, or And the Healing Has Begun, it's something different. We're not a tribute band. It's in the same way that if you go and see the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra do a night of Gershwin or Beethoven, it's not about the guy playing the violin, it's about the repertoire. And I just think that the catalogue that Van has created, I think, is unsurpassed. And I say this to people on stage. If you look through history, you have, Lennon had McCartney, Jagger had Richards, Ira Gershwin had George Gershwin, Bacharach had David, but Van does the words, does the music, does the arrangements, does the production. He is unlike anybody else. And so to be able to work with that catalogue of material is an honor. And I don't say that to be cheesy. Genuinely, when I look at the list of songs and we try and work out, I try and put a set together, we change it every night. And it's just quite ridiculous, the amount of incredible material there is to choose from. It is such a phenomenally rich canon of work. I just think we're so lucky
Yeah.
And again, I don't say this to sound corny. We're so lucky to be around while he's been here,
Yeah.
writing, creating this stuff, because there ain't going to be anyone else like this. And for as
No.
long as people have got years and years to come, hundreds of they're still going to be listening to Into the Mystic, because these songs are part of our culture. And we were in Denmark and Norway recently, where, hey, I don't speak Danish or Norwegian, but you start playing Into the Mystic, everybody knows the words.
Yeah.
And these songs have just, the journey they go on and the reach they have goes beyond your
They
life,
are.
my life. And it's been a phenomenal honor to take these songs and I won't say perform them, because we're not performing. It's not a performance. It's not a show. It's a concert of these incredible songs. And it's been actually quite emotional, because you start playing a song and you look in the audience and people are welling up, because
Yeah.
these songs have provided the soundtracks to so many people's lives. They mean so much to people that when you start playing the intro of Caravan or whatever it might be, people start crying in some instances. The power of these songs is incredible, because they are so well written. And as you can tell, I just think his work is to be held up against anybody. And it sits on the shelf, I believe, next to the Cole Porter, the Johnny Mercer, whoever you want to put it next to. So it's been an incredible, we're at the start of this journey. We want to take it as anywhere we can.
Well, and you have a right to be proud. You're obviously passionate about what you're talking about, but you have a right to be proud because you're in a select group of musicians handpicked by Van Morrison over the years. And man, to get in that band, you have to be better than great. You've got to be beyond, because he's throwing stuff at you. Everyone who knows there's no set list. You guys are flying blind up there. You have to know 40 songs at a
Well,
minimum, and
yeah,
the
and
set
the
list
rest, yeah,
ends up boiled down to 17 songs, 90 minutes,
yeah,
and you never know where you're going with him, because that's the way he likes to operate, kind of like a jazz musician doing
yeah.
improv. That's
It's
very
it's
much a part of
it,
his career.
it is very interesting, because, like I say, prior to Van, I spent 2 years in Jerry Lee Lewis's band, and with him, there was no set list, there was no rehearsal, you got no information. He sat at the piano, he would start playing, and you would be expected to go with him. And I was 18, 19 when I did that job, and so I just thought that was the way it was. So when I joined Van's band, I just assumed it was the same thing again. And to a certain extent it was, but Van is someone who's musically very generous, and he wants to work. He wants to hear what have you got to say musically.
Right.
um, Jerry Lee Lewis is playing Great Balls of Fire. You don't want to fuck around too much, pardon my French. But Van is like a jazz musician, in that he wants to create, whether that's the arrangements or the feel or whatever. So I just thought, having spent 2 years with Jerry Lee Lewis, that's what people did. And
Yeah.
I remember when I joined that there was a repertoire list. I was sent, like all the musicians are with Van, you're sent a box of CDs of all the albums. I kind of had them anyway, but it was nice to have another set. And you're expected to, he could pull anything from anywhere. And that was the joy and the challenge of it. And that's why we kind of called it the alumni, because it is like attending this on the road university with Van. You come out at the end of it, and you're equipped musically with every single tool in the book. I've got to tell you.
Yeah, well, I've had the good fortune over my career to be able to meet most every member of the Van Band, and we've formed relationships. And I talk about this in the show that we're putting together here about we Vanatics, like deadheads. We have developed friendships not only with the members of the band, but with each other. There's hundreds of us all over the world, and there isn't a van show you can go to where you're not
Yeah.
going to be among friends that
Right.
meet pre and after the gig to discuss and love every moment.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, it's people think this it's different, but it's the same for the musicians, in the same way that, I don't know if you're into sports, you want to watch whoever your team is, the England football team, right? Well, most of those players are football fans. Just because they're doing it for their living doesn't mean they're not fans. And it's the same with musicians. And that's how this came about. We had this real love of Van's music and wanted to play it. And so, it's hard to describe when you're on stage. And especially when I joined Van, I was 20.
Yeah.
And suddenly I'm on stage playing Moondance with the guy who wrote it. It's, they are pinch me moments, and you look back and think, what a privilege that was, and still is.
Yeah. Well, I really love what you guys are doing. We're going to be showing some clips in your
Okay.
website and promoting the Leo Green experience and the alumni experience. I hope that there's an opportunity to bring us to the U.S. where so many of us are. I will certainly get over to London and see you and see so many of my friends. And like you say, Matt is recently touring. I was just in Belfast a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Spent some quality time with Chris White and Matt, and Richie Buckley was back on stage for the first time since 2009, which was spectacular. Another saxophone extraordinaire. So that was
he's amazing. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So listen. I'm so grateful to you and to your passion. We share that. I have become a fan of yours and a friend, and I appreciate everything that you are doing. And I really appreciate your coming on the Franklin Show to talk about it. This is going to be a very special hour, which I will be sharing with you and all of my BBC friends and UK friends. It'll be on platforms all over the country and all over the world.
Great.
Yeah. Man. So, Leo, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate your being here. My regards to all the other members of the band. So, what's up next? Where are you guys going to be?
Well, we are just about to announce a pretty big UK tour, which is going to take place in the fall, as you guys would say, in the UK. We're doing a big London show on September the 30th at a theatre here called the Adelphi Theatre, which is right in the middle of the West End, around the corner from where I am now. That's going to be a special night. We start in London, and then we go all over the country. We're looking to come to Canada, all over the States, really. We'd like to come to. We'll go to Australia, we'll go to New Zealand, we'll go wherever they send us, because I just want to play this music to as many people as possible, because there's nothing like live music. And in some instances, some of these songs haven't been heard live for years in some cases. So we will go wherever they send us. And it's someone once said to me, look, we are just servants to the songs, and that's really what we are.
Well, I look forward to seeing you, and maybe we'll catch up in Belfast for Van's 80th coming up in late August.
I hope so. Yeah, Van's birthday is one day away from mine, so we always.
So you're a fellow Virgo. I'm September 7th. We share that.
That's right. I spent my 21st birthday with Van in Brighton. We went on holiday. We were doing some gigs. He's the day before me. I think he's 29th. Is that right?
Yeah, he's the 30th.
No, I'm the 30th.
Well, then you're at the same day. Wait, is he the 31st? Maybe he's the 31st.
I think he's the 31st, actually.
Yeah, 31st.
I think, you know what it is? I think Charlie Parker's the 29th. I think I'm the 30th and Van's the 31st.
Hey, man, what a great group of Virgos we are.
But yeah, it's listen, yeah, so it's going to be a special time. But this is a project that we want to build it and keep going. And what's really interesting is because there's a very interesting group of musicians who work with Van. It's not always reliant on that. We have different people come in, different chairs. Sometimes it's recently we've been working with Jeff Dunn on drums, who Jeff did the San Francisco album, Days Like This, The Healing Game, Too Long in Exile. Or Ralph Salmons comes in on drums, who also did Healing. So we've got this incredible pool of guys who come in, and the singers are just mind-blowing. So it's, as you can tell, I'm very excited and passionate about it. Can't wait to get back with these guys and play these songs.
Looking forward to it, my friend. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
You too, Michael.
Be safe as you're driving around doing what you do.
I will do.
We'll be in touch. All right. Thanks, Leo. Thank you very much. And we'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors. Bye.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back. Dad! You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Hey, we're back, and I am delighted to have my next guest and complete this absolutely spectacular episode of the Franklin Show, all about the Vanatics, the Van Morrison fans, and there are so many of us. I'm so proud to introduce to you my friend and significant Van author, Professor Howard DeWitt, all the way from Scottsdale, Arizona. Boy, I could reach out and touch you. Hi, Howard.
Hey, how you doing, Michael?
I am never better. So Franklin and I are delighted because you have been so notable in your writings. First of all, Howard, how many books have you written in total? Not about just about Van. In total, how many books have you written?
40 when it would be 40 when the next van comes out in hopefully about June or July, depending on Scott's work habits.
Yeah. All right. So 40 books this man is responsible for. And how many of them are dedicated to the artistry of Sir Van Morrison?
Well, there's 4 so far. I did one in 1983 called Van Morrison's The Mystic Music. Then in 2005, I started the 6-volume Van Morrison bio, of which 3 are out. The first one came in 2005, and it went 45 to 68, and the second one was 2020, I believe. I'm bad at this, and that went from 68 to 72, and then in 2023. I wrote about the It's Too Late to Stop Now tour, and that got way out of hand, 774 pages covering 19 months of his life. And then this summer, Van Morrison, Made in Marin, 1974 through 1979, will tell you all the things he did to make his legendary career what it is. And the reason I did all this was I love the books by Clinton Highland and Johnny Rogan. And it's not that they got it wrong, but they emphasized things that didn't need to be emphasized. And it was a little personally nasty. So what I'm looking at is the man, his music, and what he is, not so much in his personal life, because even though he says, don't do my personal life, he does it by writing songs that tells you about it. So basically what this is if you were to write a book on Beethoven, I think you might find Beethoven has, a plus side and a minus side, but you got to admit Beethoven's pretty damn good. So Van Morrison is kind of the Beethoven of rock music, in my opinion.
And these books, I'm gonna show one here.
Okay.
This is this.
This is the last one.
And look at the page count. I mean, you did not subscribe to Reader's Digest as a kid, I'm guessing.
No. But one of the things that got me to, I don't know how to say this nicely. Clinton Highland has written a great book. It's arguably the best book on Van Morrison, but it's so mean-spirited. And, Sam Smythe and some others have answered him by pointing out, that you got to look at the whole picture and what goes on. But my point is this. Here's a kid who dropped out of school at 14, went into the worst business in the world that ate its young, that's never paid its young, that you can't beat the record business. He not only beat it, he's a star in it. He's legendary. He's performing now, as you know, and we've both seen him recently. He's better now than he was the first time I saw him at the Whiskey A Go-Go. I know that sounds crazy, 1966. And he's the consummate professional. He's got 19 corporations. And most importantly, for those of us who like him, his music is great. I mean, not great, it's fabulous at this point. And to do what he does at 79, about to turn 80, to me seems impossible. And, that's what I did. I think there's a good side to the man that nobody ever talks about. Now, I'm not a fanboy. I don't attempt to say, well, he's not this and he's that. He goes off. We all go off. I don't know if you go off. I do. And it's complex when you write a biography. I'm working on yours, Michael, but I've only got 19 volumes. So.
Well, I'm proud to say I am a fanboy, and I've known Van and gotten to know Van, and I do defend him because he has a reputation for being a bit of a rascal. But when you've been in the business for as many decades as he's been in it and had the experiences that he's had, and we all know, well, some of us know, he gave away the rights to Brown Eyed Girl. Now, this is the number one song. I mean, it's on every radio station 27 times a day. You can imagine how he feels that he gave that away to get out of a bad contract.
He also gave away the first two Warner Brother albums.
That's right. That's
yeah,
right.
But here's the point no one understands. If I was in your face 24 hours a day as your employer, what would I be like? Or what would you be like? And that's what he faced. And the thing is, if you can forget all that nonsense, which we write about it, it's important to talk about it because it's his life. But the things that he does that you don't hear about, like recently, Roy Kane died. He donated a large sum of money to a cancer fund for his friend. I don't know what the sum is, and I don't want to know. It's none of my business. But this is the stuff you never read about. So when I look at some of these people who write, let me give you a quick story of Roy Carr. Roy Carr is probably one of the greatest rock writers in England, and he met Van in '73, and they didn't get along, and so he wrote articles like Van's a moody bugger and stuff like that. And instead of writing about the music, he's writing about what goes on when they meet. And with the British journalists, and I've had a lot of contact with these people, they want the story to be about them. Now, your podcasts, I've watched a lot of them. They're not about you. I know you think they are, but they're basically about other things. But these fellows, and I think he was the worst, Carr. And then there's a guy named Tony Sullivan who basically did everything he could to upset Van. And then they both went into management. But their idea was, we want a nasty, sensational story featuring Van Morrison, and boy, we're going to sell magazines and go on TV and sell books and blah, blah, blah. Well, what happened? What happened to the real story?
Right. Right. I mean, we all know that about journalism. It's the old sex sells and sizzle sells and all that. But aside from all that, the man's career has been more than prolific. And his latter career, this last few years, has been beyond anything anyone could ever imagine. I mean, he's putting out album after album after album. He started his own record label, so he didn't have to deal with the record companies because he's had issues with them. And I know about that. He was signed to Blue Note, which is my son's label. And, he's a tough guy to work with and a perfectionist. But beyond that, he is a prolific writer. He plays a million instruments and he's touring. And like I said, we were just in Belfast and had the great fortune of seeing 3 gigs that were, I would say, on a scale of 1 to 10, they were each a 20. And he's all over Europe right now. He'll be in the U.S. coming up, we believe, in the fall. Here we are celebrating what will be his 80th birthday in August. There'll be hundreds of us going over to Belfast for that when it's announced. And I hope you'll be there too. But it's been so much fun to be a part of this community and get to know people like you. I would have never known you, Howard, were it not for this.
No, it's same with you. Let me make a point about the record labels and that. Let me make the point about Blue Note. When he left Blue Note, they said they'd never deal with him again. Well, guess what? They signed him and dealt with him again. Way back in 1970, when he started, he had producers that said they would never deal with him. Well, those producers came years later saying, "Oh, I want to work with you." So one of the things Van Morrison says, and I love this comment, he says, "I need to educate people on my music. I need to educate the journalists what I'm doing. I need to educate the producers what I'm doing. And I need to educate the mixers and sound engineering people. And everybody who says they won't ever work with him again comes running back to the trough to work with him, realizing that he wasn't difficult. I mean, he was difficult, but he was trying to get it the way he wanted it, which is how it's supposed to be. And he goes in, as you know, and he does everything, not everything, but most of it with one take. And it's brilliant stuff. So he has a point of view you never get. And I'm trying to give you that point of view. And what I meant by fanboy, I'm not excusing anything. And I mean, I point out everything, but I'm staying away from his personal life because it's nobody's business. Now, I would love to put in there because I was friends. Roy Kane gave me all kinds of stuff for this next book. It's all positive, hilarious stuff, and you'll enjoy it. But Van would never say, what he's donated. And other people, people who've had trouble with drugs and their family. And one person in the 80s, and they told me not to put it in the book. And when you tell me not to put it in, I don't. This person's wife was dying. Van gave him $15,000 on a project. I won't tell you which one because you could look him up. Basically to help him out because his wife had cancer and that sort of thing. And then Chris Mickey, who was his guitarist, was a good friend of mine. He passed away of cancer. And Chris told me a number of stories which will not go in the book because unfortunately I'm an ethical former professional, sort of a journalist. If you tell me not to use it, I don't. But the point is, this is stuff that people should be looking for because it's another side to him. You can, we all know when he goes ballistic and that sort of thing. But let's look at the whole picture. The Beethoven thing. Tchaikovsky was terrible. You couldn't talk to him. So that's
Yeah, right. No, we always we take that stuff with a grain of salt because you hear that about all kinds of people. But the point is, you have had a great time compiling these books that are
Yes.
just voluminous and follow year by year the output and the stories and the backstories, and they're fascinating reads.
Well, thank you. I
All of
appreciate
them
that.
are on Amazon, are they not?
Yeah, they are. They're all there. You can get them, and uh, I will be happy if anybody wants to sign one. Just get a hold of me, and I can do that for you. Uh, but he has such a tremendous uh, back catalog. I'm waiting for the box sets. Mick Glossop, his engineer for years, has been working on a box set for 20, 30 years, probably
Yeah.
since, I don't know, probably since at least the 90s. And oh, where are the box sets? I want those.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they're coming. I mean, since he launched his Orangefield record label, he's
Yep.
put out 3 new albums, and he's
Yes.
got yet another one coming up in June called
Yes.
Remembering Now. They just dropped the first single, which is Down to Joy from the movie Belfast,
Yep.
which won an award. Just a beautiful piece of music that he's been performing live. And so, I mean, these are all great experiences that we've had, and
Yes.
I just want to thank you for chronicling them the way you have. Folks in the audience, you can go to Amazon, look up Howard DeWitt, and you'll see all of his books, but in particular the Van books. And the next one is due out. What did you say? June?
It should be out. Let me think. What is this? March 25th. It should be out June or July for sure.
And
It's
what's
called
the?
Van Morrison Made in Marin, 74 to 79. Let me give you a quick story on the bootleg industry. Back in the day when Van was first moved here and was at the end of the beginning and all those places, the bootleggers were really out there. The bootlegs from the 70s and 80s were voluminous. And so I go over, he's gone now, to a 61-year-old grandfather. 61 sounds pretty young to me now. Anyway, went over to his house in the Mission District. Hake Erikel was his name. He was a Greek guy. And I said, Hake, you got all these vinyl records, and he had thousands of them. And you went in there and you paid him the 10 or 15 bucks. They were expensive. And I said, Hake, geez, you're an old man. Somebody could come in and break into your house. He opened the closet door and he had about 5 guns and an AK-47. But my point is, yeah, the Vanatics in those days were just nuts with the vinyl stuff. And then the worst thing, the funniest thing was in 78 when Warner put out that free album for disc jockeys. It
Yeah,
was bootlegged by Hake. And there was a kid, his name was Zeri. I won't give you his last name because he's still alive and lives over in Fairfield.
yeah.
And they not only put the album out again, they put it out in colored vinyl. They changed what was in it. And so the Vanatics out there have this pile of, you can see these CDs behind me. I have over 1,000 bootlegs, and the real Vanatics have more. I'm a small time guy. So the point I'm trying to make is the celebration of his music is something that has made us all better and lived a better life because of having Van Morrison's music in our life, and the man too. He's a great guy.
Well, and what could be better than going to the gigs and knowing that you can then hear those same gigs that you enjoyed so much and share them with friends. I know that there was a period in which there was a guy out there called the Web Sheriff, and he was policing anybody that was using Van for any kind of financial gain, which I understand. But for those of us who are fans who could get our hands on live recordings that we weren't able to attend, I mean, this all this does to me is promote the music, and I think that's all been relaxed in recent years. I have, frankly, all 3 of the Belfast shows that I was at, and I can listen to them, and man, are they ever great. And they would be great soundboard recordings that he could release if he chose to.
Yes. And I'm going to bring you cookies when they put you in jail. So do you want to hear a story about why I should go to jail for my Van Morrison fandom?
Yes, sir, I do. And then we'll wrap it up.
Okay. From 1971 to 1975, you know this, most people don't. I was an agent for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. I got married to this lovely lady, Carolyn, in 71, and I thought I've never had a real job. I've been a professor and I've been an academic, so I'll get a real job. And I did that for 4 years. And the day I stepped in the classroom, the first class, I said to my students, do not get a real job. I told them about the job. So here's my Van Morrison connection. When Van would play at the end of the beginning and other places, I couldn't get in because the tickets would be gone. So what I would do is I would go up there and I would flash my badge, my ATF badge, and say, do you have any problems here? No. Is there anything I can do for you? No. Who's playing tonight? Oh, Van Morrison. Can I get a ticket? No. What if I paid? And then suddenly it would dawn on them I wanted to get in, so they'd let me pay the $8 or the $10 or whatever it was. So if Trump sends me to jail, Michael, I expect cookies from you once a week for this.
I'll be there with my bail bondsman friend. Don't worry.
But let me tell you the one great story of the second one. There was a blues guy named Fillmore Slim, and he didn't do very well with the blues. He wasn't real talented. So he had this stable of hookers. And so the very first time I went to the end of the beginning, Fillmore Slim, who I knew because I managed Jimmy McCracklin for about 20 years, the blues singer, Fillmore Slim was out there with these girls dancing around, and I knew the girls. I mean, I didn't know him any other way than to meet him at his gigs. And I remember one said to me, honey, would you like some chicken? I said, what's going on, Fillmore? And he says, well, I want to get in there and I can't. So here's Fillmore Slim. So he pulls out a record player, a portable record player, and starts playing some of his blues. And here's the end of the story. The bouncer comes out and says, sir, could you turn that noise off? It's bothering people. And Van's inside playing a song, and the other one was this. And one of the gigs, I don't think it was the end of the beginning. It was somewhere else. I'll never forget this. Van was at a real moment doing Into the Mystic, and all of a sudden the speaker came on, and from the kitchen it said, "Pizza number 7 is ready for Ralph." and the bootlegger took that off. I said, please, you should have kept that on the bootleg. Pizza number 7 is ready for Ralph. So if you want to talk about Van being a nasty guy, he never got nasty. He just laughed, you know.
And that would have made a great title for the bootleg too.
Yeah, that's right. Pizza number 7 for Ralph.
It's a pleasure to have you, man.
Well,
I love
thank you.
And I appreciate
Me too.
you. And I will be in touch with you. We need to get together for coffee.
Yeah,
soon.
we will, because I got to talk to you about that first concert that goes in the book. Yours. So I'll talk to you. Thank you.
All
Scott says hello. He's working hard. And thank you,
Good.
Michael, and keep the good work up. Take care of yourself.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
for being here, Howard.
My
All right,
pleasure.
folks.
Thank you.
That was
Take
great.
care.
That was great. All right, we'll be right back after these words.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. The same way you plan each detail for those moments, start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Protecting your family is the best plan you can make.
Thanks to everybody for joining us on the Franklin Show once again. I hope you enjoyed this very, very special edition as we look at the artistry of Van Morrison and the fans who love him so. I will look forward to seeing you again next week on the Franklin Show. Thanks, everybody. Good night.